Thank you so much for joining us, Andrew, at this year's Canadian Spud Congress.
Happy to be here.
Now, you are the founder and owner of Sucram's Brewing Company in Winnipeg, Manitoba. You serve
Correct.
Winnipeggers modern craft beer at your family-friendly tap room and brewery in Fort Rouge. Now, I like to make beer myself, so it's great to talk to you today, Andrew. I'm so fascinated by what you do. And a major reason we wanted to talk to you today was because you actually have experience using potatoes to make beer,
Correct.
which, yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I think a lot of people know that vodka can be made from potatoes, but we often don't think of potatoes being used in beer. I guess it's sort of a little known fact, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, there's sugars and starches in potatoes, and so you can extract those in what you're called your wort in order to transform it into beer. So potatoes are really just what's called another adjunct to using what's typically we use, which is malted barley.
Before we talk specifically about the potato beer that you made, can you give us a little bit of information about your business, when you started your brewery and how you first came to start it?
Absolutely. Sucram's Brewing Company. We started in 2019, so we're coming up to our third anniversary. And really, this started out of a hobby and a passion for home brewing. I started home brewing, I don't know now, maybe 10 years ago, and originally it was a way to save money, is what I told my wife, but that did not happen. So we it kind of escalated. I just really fell in love with the process of brewing and was fascinated by everything about it and what you could get out of it. And I basically sent off my beer to competitions just to get feedback, and I started winning some medals. And I thought, well, this is it. I won a local competition here in Winnipeg, and I was able to brew at a brewery, and that was it. We were. I remember serving the beer in that brewery, and I thought, this is what I need to do. I was working 9 to 5, had a pension and all that kind of stuff, and I thought, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it now. And I was just driven to start this place. It was a couple of years of writing the plan, and then year to execute, and now here we are, and we've been open to the public for coming on 3 years now.
Now, I see people in the background there making
Mhm.
beer. How many employees do you have? How big is your brewery? And can you tell us about a few of the beers that you produce?
Absolutely. Our We currently have, I think there's 13 team members at the moment. That's split between a few people in the back, and then we have tap room tenders, star tenders is what we call them up front. Who we do have a tap room where we welcome customers in to try flights, which are basically samples from all the beer. And as you can see behind me, this is sort of our bar area, and behind me is the brewery. We make a lot of different beers. We love experimenting, which is where the potato came from, but we love making different kinds of beers. Our core products are Desert Island IPA, which is uses a lot of hops, very flavorful, 6.5%. That one's my favorite. We make a Pilsner. It's called Cult Classic. We were the first in the city to have a core sour. So it's a dry hop sour. We actually use lactobacillus to drop the pH in the beer that gives it that sour quality, but very refreshing, tart, lemon, delicious. We also have a little can here. It's Imperial Stout. So it's 10.5%, called Starbeast. Very robust flavors, dark, chocolate, molasses, yum. And then we just launched a new product, which is just a pale ale called Eternal Sunshine. So very bright, delicious, and yeah, we have a small test system as well too. And sort of, I love experimenting. Kind of brings me back to those homebrewer days when I was coming up with recipes in my basement. And so we've kind of continued that here, and we have 16 taps. You can see some of them behind me. So yeah, we're always coming up with new beers and new recipes and trying to push the envelope of what we could do with beer.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about was the experimenting.
Hmm.
Last year, you made a test batch of a potato beer. It was called Tony Starch Potato Pale Ale. How did you come to get this idea to use potatoes in beer?
Well, I was reading some articles. I was really kind of, in all my research, looking at the historical context of beer, where it came from. I found small mentions of potatoes being used sort of in wartime when, because typically it comes from barley. And so in World War II, they came across that, when barley wasn't widely available because it needed to go for beef, and supply chains and everybody was rationing, they had to use alternatives. So alternatives being an adjunct, being typically rice or corn. And I saw a couple mentions of using potatoes. And I thought that was fascinating because I love hash browns. And I thought, well, I would love to make a hash brown beer. What would that taste like? What would that be like? So that was sort of the initial question that popped into my head. I did a little bit of research. There was a Canadian brewery as well called the Establishment, Brewery of the Year last year, and they actually used beer in their they used potato in their beer as well too. So that sort of started the wanting to test it out and actually just see what the flavor would be like.
Now, what kind of potatoes did you use in this beer, and how did this work? Did you have to peel them and cook them? How exactly did the process work?
Yeah. So in brewing, with your malted grain, you basically are they come in little, when you see the malted barley, you kind of crack the barley to get to those sugars within the middle of it, and then you mash that in hot water and kind of steep it like a tea, and you extract that sugar from the barley to create wort. And so there is starch and sugars in potatoes. And what I found, I actually reached out to the brewery as well too, and they kind of said that they did it a couple various ways and mashed it. And what we did was we cut it up and just boiled it first, and then put it into our mash, with as well as with some barley as well too, just to see what. And basically, for every 2.2 kilograms or 5 pounds that you're using of potatoes, that equals 1 pound of barley. So just made a calculation based on how much we should use to get our percentage of alcohol at the end of it. And I was very happy. I hit all the numbers, but yeah, we used about 10 pounds of potatoes in the recipe just for the test batch. We have what's called a 1 barrel system. So it's about 140 liters that we'll get for the last batch. And we boiled them and just mashed them like regular with the barley, and extracted those sugars from those potatoes.
And were these like russet potatoes? What sort of potatoes were they?
It was a russet potato. Yeah.
And why did you decide to use that particular kind? Do those ones have some advantages for beer making over other types?
I don't know. I think you could use kind of different other potatoes too. I just felt I think you could use likely sweet potato. You could use other kind of potato brands too. I think we saw mention in one of the articles when I was doing research of russet potatoes being used. So I thought, well, okay, let's just try that. They contain sugar just like any other potato.
Yeah, I suppose if it has starch in it, you can convert the
Yep,
starch to sugars and ferment it.
exactly,
And,
exactly.
and so, how did it turn out? What did your customers think? What did it taste like? What were the reviews?
I was super happy with it. Potatoes also, they don't add a lot of flavor to it. It's like a lot of big beers out there, a lot of macro beers that are widely available on the shelves, are typically used making adjuncts, either just sugar or rice, and there's not a lot of flavor that comes from it. The flavor comes from the hops or the yeast that they use in it, and so the potato didn't impart a lot of flavor. It wasn't like, I could taste potato in the final product at all. It was clean, and what it did was it actually dried the beer out a lot, which is what you want in like a summer lager. You want it to be dry. You want it to be able to sip, and it kind of dissipates on the back of your palate, and you want to go in for another sip. It was a summer crusher, as we say, and I thought it was fantastic. People were a little not sure about it, like obviously fascinated, like, oh, from potatoes, okay, let's try that. And others were like, potato, like what? Like, I think a lot of people thought that it would impart a large potato, like they'd be drinking mashed potatoes or something. But it was not that at all. It was very delicious beer. I was extremely happy with it.
And so, do you plan to make more of this kind of beer? And what potential do you see in the future for using potatoes in beer on maybe a wider scale?
Yeah, I'd like to make it again. Maybe try a different potato. Maybe try a sweet potato. See if there's some kind of color that we can get from it. Maybe there's a red ale or something that we can make sweet potato of. There definitely is potential. Um, there's always talk of crop shortages potentially. We had a record dry season, at least in Canada and some places last year, from my knowledge, where there was some crop shortages and some worry in our industry. Obviously, we rely heavily on farming and getting barley crops. And so, when you hear of droughts and all that, weather events, that the potato is another option out there. So I think there is wide use for it. I think some of the challenge is the amount that you have to use. So there's a weight to it. So you have to have probably some proper things set up if you're making a big batch. Like we just made a 1 barrel batch, which is sorry, trying to convert to gallons, 150 liters. But our big system is what's called 15 barrels. So it's like 1,700 liters. So we would have had to use, to use just, we used what's called 2% of the potatoes in our beer. To do the same on a bigger scale, you would need, quite a lot of potatoes. So it'd be a little bit of challenge to get it processed. I'm sure you could do them unprocessed, or you could probably dehydrate them and then rehydrate them relatively easy in the mash. But that would all need experimenting. So yeah, I would have to check that out and do the conversion on how many we would need for a big batch. But I would like to make some more. Yeah, it was good.
Do you see a point in time, maybe in the future, where the potatoes could be grown on a wider scale for use in beer making? Do you see a time when maybe growers are growing potatoes for the express purpose of using them in beer? In terms of like industry potential, do you see there being a time when that could potentially happen?
I think it would probably take a little bit, just by initial people's reaction of, oh, a potato beer, or some people unsure about it. But certainly, there's starch in it, so you can extract it into alcohol. So certainly there is potential. Anything can happen.
Exactly. And that's probably one of the big fun parts of your job is you have a lot of creativity to use different ingredients. And like I
Yeah.
mentioned to you earlier, I make beer myself, and that's one of the fun parts of it is the sky's sort of the limit, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's, beers typically made up of 4 ingredients: water, barley or rice and corn, and hops and yeast. And within all those, there's hundreds of possibilities that you can use. So it's like cooking, really. You just use those ingredients and put them together, and at different temperatures at different times, and what you can come up with is just, it's awesome.
Exactly. And that is the fun of brewing. And so thank
Hmm.
you so much, Andrew, for your time today talking about brewing with potatoes. It was great to have you on. If anybody wants to find out more about your products, they can visit your website. It is sookrams.com, SOOKRAMS.com, correct?
Correct. And you can find us on Instagram or Twitter at Sukrams Brewing.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this segment of our session today on alcohol made from potatoes. We're going to talk about potato vodka now, and I am with Jeff Stewart at the Righan Distillery in Alberta, which makes a potato vodka. There is very little potato vodka made in Canada, so this is a rare product. And Jeff is going to tell us all about making potato vodka. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to speak at your conference. So as you mentioned, we're in Nisku, Alberta, just outside of Edmonton. We were the second licensed craft distillery in Alberta about 7-8 years ago. And now we've grown to become one of the biggest craft distilleries in Canada, and with locations like also in Texas and New Brunswick. Potato vodka is something that we're very proud of. There definitely are not very many people in Canada making potato vodka. Historically, there's a problem with potato vodka, and anything really that grows in the ground as a source material, and that's getting them clean enough to not have some kind of dirt flavor in your vodka. So we're using culled potatoes mostly from the Little Potato Company, ones that aren't the right size or have machine marks on them or weird little nodes on the side of them. Some of them are actually grown about half an hour from where we're located by a buddy of mine, Corey Jesperson. He's a seed grower as well, actually. And so he grows blushing bells. So those would be the purple ones that are in the 3-colored little potato packs. And so he's able to get these culls for us. And the nice part about it is they are cleaned perfectly by the Little Potato Company. Otherwise, we would have to have some kind of wash system or peeling system. And a lot of small distilleries don't want to invest the money that it would take to do something like that. We tried originally to use some russet potatoes because we knew the starch content was higher in them, and we've done some research on this. Full-size potatoes are harder for us to use than the smaller potatoes that have a thinner skin, actually. And we're finding that we're having similar yields with the blushing bells than what we did with the russets. We tried Yukon Golds. We've even tried some sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes must have a sulfur component in them because they were pretty raunchy. I'll tell you that. So the experiment of trying to make vodka from sweet potatoes is out the window. We will not be doing that again. But if you can make nice potato vodka, what you have is an amazing creamy mouthfeel on your tongue. It completely coats it, and it's a very smooth vodka, and it mixes extremely well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, actually, in terms of the flavor that potatoes add to vodka. I know vodka is made from like all kinds of different things. You can make it from grain. You can make it from potatoes. I know there's actually vodkas on the market made from grapes. There's actually vodka made somewhere in the world made from milk, if you can believe it or not.
In Alberta, or in Canada, actually, in Ontario, yes. So vodka, they call it, yes. So vodka is interesting. It's one of the only liquors that's not classified by what you make it from. It's classified by how pure you make it. So it's supposed to be odorless and flavorless. But with the advent of so many craft distilleries, everybody's doing their own little twist on things. That the potato vodka does have a definite flavor to it. When it comes off the still, it's at 96.5% alcohol. And at that point, our potato vodka actually tastes like orange creamsicles. It has a very distinct orange flavor, nice citrus flavor to it. During the carbon polishing process, and the dilution process down to 40% from 96.5, you'll lose a lot of that flavor unless you have a really good tongue that's trained, which, a distiller would have that sort of tongue. But the biggest thing with potato vodka definitely is the creaminess of the mouthfeel on the tongue. It almost like it coats your tongue in cream, obviously. Yeah. It's also a type of vodka that really takes other flavors well, whereas some vodkas don't do that. Traditionally, some of the best vodkas in the world are made from wheat, and wheat grown in a northern hemisphere, like where we live in Edmonton, because the grain tends to have a higher starch content and a little bit lower protein content. When you have the long growing day where we have 16, 17 hours of daylight during the daylight, higher protein leads to off flavors in liquors. That's why I assume there must be some kind of sulfur components within the sweet potatoes that gave those off flavors that we would get. So we're extremely happy with the supply of potatoes that we have here, and very happy that it's a unique product that we make that a lot of people don't want. There is a misconception within the market that the only vodka that would be considered gluten-free would be either a potato vodka or perhaps the vodka you mentioned being made from grapes or that sort of thing. The reality is that anything that goes through a still is gluten-free by the time it comes out the other side. So even vodka that's made from 100% wheat is gluten-free at the other end. Some guys tend to kind of prey on the misinformation that's floating around on the internet and say, here, we have this wonderful gluten-free potato vodka, come and buy this. And they charge a premium for it because they market it as a gluten-free product. And we answer questions all the time with people asking about gluten in the alcohols. And some people just don't believe you when you tell them there's no gluten in that wheat vodka. We say, fine, buy this potato vodka then instead. So it's nice for us to have that alternative. Because it's a vodka that takes flavor so well, it's really good as a cocktail vodka. So we present it that way when we go out and sell it to bars and restaurants that are trying to make mixed cocktails. And we also make a lot of other different types of alcohol from vodka. So as for example, gin is made from vodka. It's vodka that's been steamed through a tea bag. Flavored vodkas are just steeped with flavoring ingredients. So because it takes flavor so well, we make a pink lemonade flavored version of it. So Pink Whitney became extremely popular last year. I tasted it. It wasn't a very good quality. So we took our premium potato vodka. We got some real lemons and some real raspberries, and we made a raspberry lemonade, basically flavored vodka. And it's an extremely good seller for us. We can also go into making liqueurs with the potato vodka as a base. So the liqueur Blue Curacao is something that we take the potato vodka and we add some citrus flavors and some coloring to it, and end up making a beautiful liqueur that way. So it's a very versatile product for us to take and branch into making other different types and flavors. We have 78 different types of alcohol that we make at our distillery, by far the biggest portfolio in Canada. And we're always making new flavors all the time. And when we're doing our mad scientist stuff at the beginning of the process, we have to decide, is our base going to be a wheat flavored vodka or a potato vodka or a whiskey or a rum or those sort of things. So quite often the potato vodka is the one that we go to.
Can you show us some of those bottles you've got there in the back, Jeff? I love
Absolutely.
this little setup you've got here.
My arms are short, but we're in our little tasting room here, which can fit about 30 people. And then we have an event space next door that holds up to 150 people for weddings. So here we're going all the way from having maple rye and white rum that we make from sugar beet molasses and amber rum and spiced rum and butter tart schnapps. Something like Fireball. We've got some aged whiskey products, which take a long time to get. The Zambuca that we make is actually made from the potato vodka base. We're making tequila now. We've got a few types of gin that we make. And there, of course, is the potato vodka that everybody's so interested in. This is a potato vodka. This is a corn one. And this is a wheat one. The Americans tend to be used to drinking corn-based vodka. Europeans tend to be used to drinking potato-based vodka. And we and Russians tend to be used to drinking wheat vodka. So, and we've got another whole line of products on the bottom here. So we've got dill pickle flavored vodka and pickled horseradish and habanero lime and jalapeno basil and iced tea and blueberry and all kinds of crazy flavors here. And if you'll give me 2 seconds, I'll run in the back real quick here and just show you what the stills look like. So my staff are back there cooking up some rye whiskey today. So hopefully it's not too loud. I got to pass what I call the world's smallest liquor store. So we have our products and there's our beer maker, Angus there. Give a wave. Stock in the beer fridge. We have our products in about 1,400 liquor stores in Alberta, and we ship across Canada. We have an online store that you can go on to our website and buy any of our products, RighandDistillery.com. And even though we have our products in all those different places, we still sell most of our product from our little tiny store that we have on site because people want to come here and do a tour and learn about how we make everything. So I'm coming onto the production floor here now. We've, of course, got Charlie. We've got our distillery dog that's always around here is our Walmart greeter. And this is Christy. Christy looks after all of our quality control and packaging. And this is Mike, our general manager here. And Mike's just cleaning up the roller mill. We just finished grinding up a bunch of rye to make a batch of rye whiskey. This is our mash tun here. Grain auger off my family farm in Gull Lake, Saskatchewan. And then once it's cooked to mash, it goes into fermenters for about 4 days. And yeast turns the mash into about a 10% alcohol mix. Then we'll take that mix and we'll throw it into our big still. We call it Mighty Morley. And it'll go through this tower system. And what this tower system does is concentrate the alcohol from 10% in our mash up to about 75% alcohol if we're making whiskey, or up to 96.5% if we're making any of our vodka products, which in turn get turned into gin or that sort of thing. We've got 4 different types of whiskey that we make. We package everything by hand. Here, Christy today has been bottling garlic vodka, which is a really popular product for us for making Caesars. I'm not sure how else you could possibly drink it. So our trademark bottle looks like an oil drilling rig since we're in Alberta. We also package in larger plastic bottles for, you know, restaurants and bars and things like that. We're getting into doing pre-canned cocktails now. And the potato vodka is definitely the base for a bunch of the cocktails that we're making because it is such a good mixing vodka. So we have pre-canned Caesars that we're doing, which is pretty tasty. We've also got some coolers we're doing. I'm partnered with an indigenous tea company using their traditional blueberry hibiscus teas. And then back tucked in the corner here is Angus's beer making stuff and a little bit of our wine and mead making stuff. So that's the 2-minute tour I can give you of our facility. This is one of our 4 warehouses. We are building a new facility right now that'll be complete in November, 3 miles directly east of the Edmonton International Airport, and consolidating these 4 warehouses into one, which we're excited about. We have a sister distillery that we've built in Seguin, Texas, halfway between San Antonio and Austin, called CY Distillery. And we have a 3rd distillery that we just completed that my uncle and my cousin are running in Fredericton. And that one is called First Light Distillery. And the drilling rig bottle works well in Alberta and Texas, but not necessarily in the Maritimes. So down there, we patented a bottle that looks like the lighthouse at Peggy's Cove in Nova Scotia. And we're planning to work with McCain's down there on some of their culls and make some potato vodka there, as well as molasses from the Crosby's molasses plant. So yeah, we're a little company that started with just me and Mike 7 years ago. And now we're up to 34 staff in locations in other countries. So I haven't slept in 7 years.
Well, but before I let you go, Jeff, like in terms of making potatoes or making vodka from potatoes, is it very labor intensive, like working with the potatoes? I imagine you have to cook them. You have to go through that whole process. What is that like?
The biggest issue working with them is the skins. And conveying them. So, you know, I'm not set up like my friend Corey Jesperson is with all the conveyor systems that all your potato growers would have, or the kind of trucks that have conveyors in the bottom of the hopper bins that they have and whatnot. So for us, we have to get pretty creative sometimes, and moving them is tough. Like sometimes we're running those little potatoes just through a grain auger, believe it or not. A full-size potato won't go through there, but a baby potato, a fingerling potato will go through a grain auger. And that's what we do most often, to be honest with you. And as far as it comes to mashing them, we need to basically break that skin open so that the boiling part, we're trying to make potato soup, honestly, in that giant 2,000-liter mash tank that I quickly showed you in the back. And if the skins are intact, it takes forever for them to bust apart and for it to turn into that creamy potato soup that we want. But if the skins are off of it, it happens quite quickly. It's about an 8-hour process to make a 2,000-liter batch of potato soup. So what we did, we modified an apple grinder from the apple cider industry into a potato chopper, basically. So we put a little motor on the thing and we built a hopper on the top, and we'll take a metric ton of potatoes in a tote and drop them in the top of this hopper. And they're through there in about half an hour, actually, and into the auger and straight into the mash tun. Like I said, we cook them 8 hours, let them sit overnight. Once that's done, we have to add some nutrients for our yeast, and we have to get the pH just right. We go through a cooking process where we introduce enzymes into the mash that take the starch that's in the potatoes and convert it into sugar. We need sugar for fermentation. We can't even have 2 sugar molecules stuck together. It has to be a single sugar molecule. So it's a very fussy process, very specific temperatures and pHs that we have to achieve with this. But if we've done it right, we'll have conversion of all the starch to sugar. The one thing I forgot to mention to you earlier when we were talking about grain potatoes or grain versus potatoes for making vodka is the one big drawback to potatoes is how much water there is in them. So we need about 60% more potatoes to make the same amount of liquor at the end as we would if we were using a dried grain. So that is another drawback to working with potatoes. So there's there's multiple reasons why small craft distillers maybe aren't jumping on to making potato vodka. But for us, we don't pay a whole lot for those culls. And they're so clean to begin with that it's a wonderful product for us to work with. And we will definitely continue to make it and continue to expand our line of flavored products that come from a potato vodka base.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank you so much, Jeff. This was very enlightening. And thanks for the tour. And I know people can check out your website. It's righanddistillery.com, correct?
That's correct. And we have a little bit of a reality television show that airs west here on Global TV. So if you go to our website, you can click on some links to some of our past episodes of our TV show. And there's one there that's dedicated very much to making potato vodka. I can't off the top of my head remember which episode it is, but you'll find it. It'll be in the title of Potato Vodka.
Oh, we will have to check that out. Well, thank you so much, sir, and have a great day.
You bet. Enjoy your conference. Thanks for the opportunity to speak.